Hi everyone, I'm Tally, this is Farrell, and we are bored of it. Welcome to our review of a game you may just have heard of, Ark Nova.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Okay, so Ark Nova has been the hotness since it first came out, and we finally decided to give it a crack. In Ark Nova, you're tasked with building a modern and scientifically managed zoo.
Mechanically, there's a bit of a polyomino puzzle, a little bit of worker placement, a lot of card play, and really a whole lot of mechanisms you've seen before, but here they're blended together seamlessly. So, is Ark Nova as good as you've heard? Let's find out.
You'll start Ark Nova with your own personal little zoo map, which is currently empty aside from some rock and water spaces. Beneath that, you have your 5 action cards. And on your turn, you'll pick one of those cards, do the action written on it, and then move it to the bottom of the row. The strength of your action is determined by the position the card is in from 1 to 5, with 5 being the strongest. For example, there's an action where you can build, where you might add an animal enclosure polyomino tile into your zoo, and the strength of the action determines how big that enclosure can be. Another example is the animals action, where you can play animal cards, which adds animals into your zoo. However, certain animals need certain types of enclosures and size of enclosures, so you need to have that in place first, along with any other prerequisites that animal may require.
Other actions include the sponsor action, which will allow you to play a sponsor card from your hand, or the association action, which will allow you to send a little worker over to this association board. Here, you can go up the research track. You could partner with a zoo from another continent, which will make animals from that continent cheaper. You could collaborate with a university, which will increase your microscope symbols and maybe let you hold more cards in your hand. Or you could just score one of these scoring cards. Then, finally, you have the cards action, which is just to draw cards, or you could actually snap, which is to take one card from this display here anywhere in the display. What's interesting is that these cards are double-sided, with the other side being a more powerful version, and you'll have several chances to upgrade these throughout the game. They also might unlock, if you have the card upgraded, special areas across all of the boards that you can then interact with.
There are no conventional rounds in Ark Nova, but rather there's a shared break tracker, which moves up when certain actions are taken. When it gets to the end of the track, everyone will take income, new cards will be added to the display, and you'll discard down to your hand limit. In Ark Nova, there are 2 important tracks for scoring, the appeal track and the conservation track. The appeal track is relatively easy to move up and will likely mostly be done when you play animal cards into your zoo. The conservation track is much harder to move up and is most often done by playing endangered animals into your zoo or by fulfilling conservation cards. The end of the game is triggered when one player's 2 tokens cross each other on the tracks. If the end of the game is triggered by a player, the game is then over for them and everyone else gets one more turn, or if it was triggered during a break, then everyone gets one more turn. You'll then score up any endgame scoring, and the winner is the person who has managed to create the largest distance between their appeal token and their conservation token when they cross each other.
Now, we actually weren't that excited about getting Ark Nova because we kept hearing it mentioned in the same breath as Terraforming Mars, a game we were very whatever about. But we're glad to say that although some of the systems are the same in both games, Ark Nova is just so much more. What you should know is that you'll have probably seen the systems at play here before, particularly if you're an avid gamer. But what makes Ark Nova special is the way it blends them seamlessly together, creating something that is much more than some of its parts.
Yep, and the real star of the show here is the action selection system. The fact that the actions get stronger the longer you can go without using them is devilishly good design. And you're constantly torn between wanting to do what you need to do immediately and organising your next 4 or so actions in an efficient way. It's the best kind of system in board games because it's super simple to analyse, but still takes up a tremendous amount of brain space because efficiency is of the utmost importance. Then you have the card system, which is extremely clean and satisfying. The iconography is easy to understand, the cards are really varied, and it links in well with the build action. We would say that more often here than in other games that have similar card systems, the decision of which cards to play from your hand is a super tough one, particularly in relation to the variable scoring conditions. The cards also have great interplay with other systems. For example, the association action, where getting a partner zoo will decrease the cost of playing certain animal cards. Most often, the question isn't if you will play a card, but when, because they all have their own unique appeal, and it's more a case of how your sponsors are going to be affected and even certain animals, which is a terrific decision to have. Another really engaging problem is deciding which of your action cards you upgrade, because they're all useful in their own ways, but maybe some are more beneficial for certain strategies. Again, this is all great design at work and all adds interesting wrinkles into how Ark Nova works and allows different options to emerge. And looping back to the building element of Ark Nova, this is also extremely satisfying. It's a particularly lovely and rewarding puzzle, and it does require some good spatial organisation in your zoo, as you don't want to do a bad job of your organisation and end up at the end of the game with not enough space to build a large enclosure for a large animal that could score you some big points. The zoo map is also littered with rewards, so it's also a really nice feeling to get something useful for an action you'd be doing anyway. This is very emblematic of Ark Nova, to be honest, as what we really love about it is the drive it gives the players. It basically dangles a little carrot in front of you in terms of what you want to complete in the short term. For example, building an enclosure, playing an animal, or scoring a goal. But the second that you do that thing, the carrot then just moves and there's something else crucially important that you also want to complete. We really love this feeling, and it means the game is never static. Basically, we can't stress enough how well all of the systems in Ark Nova interlink together and how engaging the moment-to-moment gameplay is. And, like a lot of other Euros, you're constantly being rewarded for pretty much anything that you do, so that you always get these little dopamine hits and new options available to you, which is really terrific. Now, whilst this is a terrific game, it certainly isn't perfect. If you've watched or read any other reviews of Ark Nova, then you'll know that the complaints we have are quite similar to many other people. First off is the length. At 2 players, it has a pretty reasonable game time, but at 3 and 4, it does start to just drag on a little bit. Another unavoidable issue is the inherent randomness of having such a huge deck of cards, which means you can get completely shafted if you're working towards certain endgame scoring or you need prerequisite symbols. And for us, the randomness links back to the length. There's just too much randomness for a game that can go on for quite a long time. Sure, you might be enjoying the moment-to-moment mechanical gameplay, but it can be pretty frustrating to get to the end of the 2 hours and feel like you just never had a chance because of the cards that you were drawing. The luck and length are an unfortunate matchup, considering this is essentially a race game, as the player who triggers the end is the most likely to win, just as the other players need to be in a position to cross over their tokens in their final turn to even be in with a chance. Whilst this does make Ark Nova a surprisingly exciting high-pressure experience, it can cause a lot of frustration if the cards just don't go your way. Both Farrell and I have had some very annoying games where our hands were just constantly filled with sponsors and scoring cards, which meant we could never play any animals or work towards any specific scoring criteria. However, the luck also allows for some real highs. Often, players will be racing to get the highest available scoring level on a scoring card, which may require 5 of a certain symbol. When you suddenly draw a card or cards which allow you to complete the final piece of the puzzle later on in the game, it is ridiculously exciting. And it's really fulfilling to slap your player token down and gain a 5 cool conservation points. It's also a really engaging and exciting decision about which level of scoring to go for. Early on in the game, you could just go for the lower levels of scoring, which will get you less points, but will need less symbols in your zoo, and then it allows you to focus on other things throughout the game. Or you could stick it out and aim for those higher levels of scoring, which will of course get you more points as they require more symbols, but then there is the risk that other players will beat you to it, and then you've wasted time and resources that you really can't afford to.
Another common complaint is that the interactive elements of Ark Nova feel completely tacked on. You can only really interact with other players in 2 ways. The classic, somebody takes a card or a scoring space before you could, or what people are talking about when they criticize this game, these kind of interaction tokens that occur when you play specific animals that put them into play. And these interaction tokens are always negative, and it could be something simple as player steals a card from your hand, up to you having to pay to take specific actions. And it's just a very weird system, because usually you're not playing animals for their abilities, that's just a bonus. You're playing it for their symbols. So it means players are being punished apathetically. And it also just doesn't fit with the vibe of Ark Nova. You know, it's this very solitary Euro where you're kind of working your way towards the next thing you want, and then the next thing and the next thing. So it's really jarring to have roadblocks thrown in front of you and be told, oh, you can't take those actions because they're not powerful enough, or you have to pay for them, which then means you can't do the thing you're trying to do. Because again, it's random if anyone gets these cards or not. So you might never have a chance to play them. They might always be played against you. And yeah, it's just very odd system. Final thoughts. Unsurprisingly, given that Ark Nova came out last October and is already in the BGG top 10 games of all time, it's pretty terrific. However, it might not be for everyone. If you prefer shorter games, then probably not for you. If you like theme over mechanisms, you might want to give it a miss. But if anything we've said here today has kind of piqued your interest, then it's definitely worth your time to check it out.
It's in that small group of games where you just sit there as you're playing and just think, oh, this is such a great game. That said, we do have some gripes which may spoil the experience for some. For us, the gripes that we do have are immaterial compared to the whole experience. But if you want a perfectly even, competitive game, then this may bother you. Also, if only it had a more exciting ending. Seriously. If you enjoyed this video, we'd really appreciate it if you could give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you're not already. The dogs always appreciate the subs. Look at them, they love it. And feel free to ask us any questions about Ark Nova in the comments, and if you've played it, let us know what you think, if you agree with us or disagree. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.
Bye.